Hello, Keith Walker speaking. This is the Video A core readings for week 3. This week you'll be dealing with Peterson chapter 2, pages 17 to 46. The book talks about different financial systems, and obviously nowadays a lot of that's computer orientated, and a lot of you will experience different computer systems for different companies, but basically they're the same idea. They're all meant to keep track of the costs, the inputs, the outgoings of any construction company, and presumably, hopefully they're good enough to then bring it down to the various projects that you're working on, so you can tell the difference between projects, and then also take into account hidden or sunk costs from central office. So you read the chapter about financial systems, you'll have something, some of you, particularly those that are in work, will already have some experience of that. Those that haven't entered the workforce yet, you just understand that it's an important part of any construction company. And if you don't have a system at all, you do know you're going to be in financial trouble with that company. One of the problems that construction managers will face is the delay, and again it's addressed in that chapter, of not understanding the inputs to the construction project. You'll see down there later on that we talk about cash and accrual accounting systems. Basically a cash system, and this is very simple, is just something you deal with the payments or the receipts as you receive them or as you make them. We're an accrual system, and again it's just a simple definition. You actually put them in as you take on the liability to pay a bill, or you take on the asset of being receiving a payment in some given time, even though you might not have actually received the cash. Now the advantage of the cash system is it's simple, quick and easy, and probably is the way that most single owner businesses who build one house at a time probably operate, from the glove box of the utility maybe. But when you get a little bit more complex than that, and you've got projects overlapping, etc., and you're not a single person business, then you're going to perhaps need something a little bit more complex. And the chapter is just to let you identify and know that these systems do exist. The accrual system is a better way for a manager to keep track of the actual costs, inputs and outgoings of a project, even though they might not have been made at that stage, so that he hopefully or she hopefully knows at the end of week X that we've made this amount of commitment and we've got this amount of payment coming in, so they know whether they're tracking the projected profit of that project or not. If they're not, then some adjustments need to be made. If they're on track, then that's very good, and that's working out how the company plans it, or the project manager is expected to control it or plan for it. On page 24 you'll see a little assets and liabilities equation. Again, it's just so that you appreciate that a company has to have assets to be worth anything, and assets are simply what you've got in hand that you could realise with cash, less what you might have to pay out. So for example, my asset base would be quite high because I have a house that I own, I have a car that I own, I have a boat that I own, and my liabilities is just a small debt on my credit card for a holiday that I took a couple of weeks ago that I haven't paid off yet. So I would be very asset rich. Now in a construction company it's a lot more complex than that, as per the items and whether something comes in or out, and you'll see that in the textbook. For example, the way they treat long and short term loans, the way they treat land values and things like that. But the essence of it is, and that's all we want you to pick up on, the essence of it is that if you've got a company that has no assets, then it's going to be very difficult for you to keep that company running unless you have the support of a financial lender of some sort. Now in the arousal situation, you have the parent company supplying you with unlimited cash, and I've mentioned that, Willie and I mentioned that in the lecture. But it's a unique situation you find yourself in. But in the real world you don't have that. If you borrow more money, your bank charges you more interest. If you have more interest, you have more outgoings. Therefore you have more outgoings than you projected, you have less profit. And then the whole idea at the end of the day is you're meant to make a profit from that particular project. So again, chapter 2, just getting you across some of the different financial systems. There's an example of a ledger in there, things like this. We know it's an American textbook. We have not been able to find the equivalent that's based on Australian research. But again, we're not trying to make you accountants, we're just trying to make you appreciate these things. So that if you end up running your own company, if you don't know how to look after it, you make sure you pay somebody who does, because it'll be important for running your business. The financial management goes to the nub of the whole textbook. Now onto the other part, the management side of the readings for week 3. Chapters 8 and 9, page 199 to 206, and 23 to 230 to 234, and 242 to 247. These are listed in the outlines. I probably won't mention those again. You can find them in the course outlines. All this information is very clearly identified to you. You just have to read it. You just have to look at it. And if you're not doing that by now, this is week 3. We're not getting our message through to you. This is a university 4th year course degree, and the responsibility is on you to make the effort to get the marks. We encourage you. We're delighted when you do participate, but if you don't, then that's we accept that as your effort and the consequences of your marks. So there's your core readings. One of the things that refers to in there is, again, the global financial crisis. I talked about that last week, because maybe there's another one coming, and you're never quite sure what's going to happen in this business, so you have to sort of constantly plan to be ready for whatever the future might throw. It talks about the reasons for planning, why bother to plan, and those sort of things. You can see those detailed in the textbooks there. It talks about the different types of plans. Now, one of the things I'll talk about here, we call this a strategic plan for you in the arousal situation. We used to, in the course years ago, we used to do a strategic plan and a business plan, and what we found was that we spent too much time trying to differentiate between the two for students, and it didn't become a valuable exercise. So we've just limited it now to strategic planning. And to give you a very simple analogy of that, the what you're going to do, the where you're going to do it, and the how you're going to do it are the 3 parts of a planning process, just in very simple words. The what and where is the strategic part, and the how is the business part. Now, a business part can have a marketing plan, can have a financial plan, can have a succession plan. There's a whole lot of other little plans that can come in under the business part. We're aware they're there, but we're not trying to make this any more complex than it is for you to decide the what and where. Now, partly because this is a construction course and the arousal thing is set in Victoria, we've partly made that decision for you. You're going to be in construction and you're going to be in Victoria. But you have to decide where in Victoria, and you have to decide what you're doing in Victoria. Are you going to be doing just in single-storey dwellings? Are you going to take your team and develop them into a high-rise expertise? Whatever the decision you want to make. So that's the reason we've just limited to strategic plan. So we're asking you the what and where part of that plan. The how part, yes, you can write a lot of those, and yes, they are important, but we haven't done that just because of time, and we just want you to get an overview of planning. Now, one of the reasons for planning too is that if you have a plan, you can communicate it to others. If you've got a plan, you can communicate to other people, and they can come on board with the plan, and they can offer criticism of the plan, and they can offer support of the plan, etc., etc. If you don't have a plan, people are never quite sure exactly what you might be trying to achieve. And while that's all right if it's just you deciding where to put the chook house up the back of the yard or build a garage, doesn't cut the mustard in complex projects. You need everybody on board with a complex project. You need your staff working towards the right direction. You need the right staff in the right place, etc., etc. And that's what you'll find out when you do your arousal simulation as managers and owners of a company. Short-term and long-term plans. You can see in there's a reference to one of the psychologist studies saying a lot of people aren't comfortable with anything more than 3 months. And it's a rare person who can handle a 20-year plan and things like this. Now, that's not meant to be a criticism of anybody. It's just meant to be an observation of the real world, so that as a manager who lives in the real world and plans in the real world, you're aware there are these differences, and when you develop your plan, you can communicate it to people as necessary. For example, in this course, Willie and I have learned that it's best to not put all the information straight up in the first week, because students just don't read it. They only need to read it when they need to know about it, and we've learned that we just have to participate by giving them the bits of information they need each week, and we get the better value from the students' effort, and the students appreciate it in terms of filtering for their time. So that's a simple sort of how we communicate the plan of you successfully passing this course. Now, one of the things that I've talked about is giving you the tools to manage an organisation, and in there you'll see the SWOT, strength, weaknesses, etc. in your planning. It's a very simple tool, but a very valuable tool. And if you haven't heard of that before, I suggest you read those areas around it and some of the other readings. Some of you will be quite familiar with this already. It's just a mechanism for somewhere to start. If you're not sure what your plan's going to be and where you're going to start, then the good thing is to sit down and say, what's our strengths, what's our weaknesses? And obviously a company that's successful will play to its strengths, and a company that's successful will also improve their weaknesses and things like this. It's not only the strengths and weaknesses in the company, but it's also those in the environment. And by the environment, I mean the business world outside you, which then harks back to the comments I've made about global financial crisis and what's happening in the market and things like that. So, okay. So please read those. They'll all come in handy and helpful at the end. And thank you for listening to me. Bye.